Hi, it's Samantha from Samantha by Design. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today's time-lapse painting is a pet portrait commission of a beautiful black lab named Senko. I'll be walking you through the process, so let's get started. I'm painting this on an 8x10 gallery wrapped canvas, and I'm using acrylic paints in the colors Mars Black, Burnt Umber, Titanium White, Zinc White, Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Dioxazine Purple, Quinacridone Magenta, Burnt Sienna, Unbleached Titanium, and Yellow Ochre, as well as some gloss glazing liquid. Here I'm mixing up my palette and I'm making sure I have all the colors I need to paint Senko. Even though he is a black dog, there's a lot of grays, blues, and purples in the highlights of his fur. And I also didn't use straight black from the tube at any point for this painting. I made sure to mix my black with some brown or purple, and this is to ensure that the black doesn't look flat and lifeless. If you've been watching me for a while, you know I love starting with the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, so I'll be painting from dark to light, and I'll be keeping a close eye on my reference photo. Just in case you're wondering how I got the image onto my canvas, I drew the picture on paper first, and then I rubbed the back with some white school chalk. I taped the picture to the canvas and traced the lines with a stylus to transfer the image. I do this instead of just drawing directly on the canvas because that can get a little messy, and this way I can render my image before I transfer it. I'm just taking my time and painting what I see in the reference picture. If there's a white dot, I'm going to be painting a white dot, and I find it's much easier to paint if you break things up into shapes and you work in sections. Now that the first layer of the eyes and nose are done, I'm moving on to the rest of the face. I'm paying close attention to where my lights and darks go because that's what determines the shape of what I'm painting. Shadows will push something back and highlights will bring them forward. As far as brush strokes go, I'm trying to keep them in the direction that the fur grows, and it's okay if you don't get everything perfect on the first layer. We are just setting up our base and we can alter and fix things in the next layer. When you paint a black dog, the highlights are the most important part in my opinion because they are what makes the painting look more realistic. Really look at your reference photo and notice all the subtle color changes. There's hardly any pure black, and it's mostly different shades of grays and browns. The first layer of the face is done, so I'm moving on to the body. I'm using the same techniques of following the direction of the fur and working from dark to light. I'm also using a micro mister water bottle to spray my palette once in a while to keep my paint from drying out while I work. Take your time and use whatever brushes make your job easier. I like to use bigger brushes for the first few layers to cover more space, and then I move to smaller brushes for details. And it doesn't really matter if you use a filbert or a bright or a bristle brush, whatever makes your painting process easier for you. I'm not sure if you can see this on camera, but my first layer is a little streaky, and that's why it's important to do more than one layer. I'd also like to note that it's important to step back once in a while to look at your work, so that you can see what's happening, because sometimes we get so caught up on one section and we might end up overworking it or making the process even longer. I like to take pictures personally along the way to compare it to the reference, but remember that we are not painting photorealism, we are going for likeness and not a perfect copy. Now we're moving on to the second layer, and here I'm making sure that my lights and darks are where they are supposed to be. I'm making sure that there's good coverage, and I'm also making sure that the fur is going in the right direction. I'd also like to note that this is where I switch to my smaller brushes to make sure that I can get the details right. So as you can see, I'm working section by section and I'm moving around the canvas a lot so that I don't get stuck on one part. Make sure you let the paint dry between layers. Acrylic paint tends to stick to itself, so if the paint isn't fully dry, it will lift the previous layer right off the canvas and you'll be left with a big hole, and that's not fun. Now I'm finishing off the face, and we will be adding the background snow and the snow on his face in the third layer. I didn't forget about it, it's just easier to paint something that's on top when the thing that's underneath is already painted. Now I'm going to start putting in the snow. I know it's tempting to just paint it all white, but if you want it to look realistic, it's important to notice what colors are in the shadows. In this case, it was like a purpley gray color, and again, it's okay if you don't get it right on the first try. We're going to be doing multiple layers of this. Here I'm making sure I'm painting the edges to match the painting so that when the client hangs it up in her home, she won't need to get it framed. Off camera, I gave this background a quick blow dry so that the paint was completely dry, and I went ahead and did a second layer. And now I'm just adding the fur of the ears back on top so that it looks like the dog is sitting on the snow and not in the snow. And now I'm just going over the highlights of the body one more time to make sure they're perfect before I start adding the snow on his face. I know it looks like I'm just using white here, but that's because the dog is so dark. I'm using a mixture of ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and white for this. It's like a nice blue-gray color, and I'm just saving my pure white for the highlights at the end. For the first layer of snow on the face and body, I'm using a brush to get the bigger clusters down, and then for the smaller little pieces of snow, I'm going to switch to a toothbrush and actually just splatter it on there. Now we're all done, and it's time for my favorite part, the signature. Don't forget to sign your work. And here's what the finished painting looks like. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to be notified when I upload next. It really helps me out. You can find the link to my social media accounts in the description down below, and thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you a lot, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!